Sam, to start off, win total here sitting at 10.5. 49ers are favored to win the NFC West, with the Rams kind of dealing with that Matthew Stafford injury. Plus 165 is what the 49ers are sitting at. How are you looking at this team this year?
So I'm actually very bullish on San Francisco, and it takes a lot for me to feel this good about a team. I find myself in a very deja vu spot, though, because the way I feel about San Francisco this year is the way I felt about Philly last year. If you remember, Kate, all last summer, there was a lot of question marks about Philly, and the defense wasn't good the year before, and people weren't sure about the offense, and there were a lot of questions. And Philly was 7-8-1 to win the NFC. You look at Philly now, they're 7-1 to win the Super Bowl. But Philly made some changes in the offseason, and their biggest move last year was bringing in Vic Fangio to run the defense. And he changed everything on that side of the ball. Well, this year, Philly is San Francisco, because San Francisco was a hot team last summer. Everybody was talking San Francisco, and then they just got decimated by injuries. But they made some changes, and they go out and they get Robert Saleh to come back and run their defense. The DC now is Robert Saleh yet again. And the stock on San Francisco is relatively low. Last year, they're coming off a Super Bowl appearance. This year, they're coming off a disaster of a season. So the prices are relatively nice. I look at them right now, there's a plus 950 on them to win the NFC. I think they got younger and quicker on the defensive side. Structurally, they'll be better. And ideally, you have more than 4 games of Christian McCaffrey, who's 22-1, 25-1 to win the Offensive Player of the Year. The schedule is a joke. I saw Warren Sharp said it's the easiest in the NFL. We look at their roster on offense and go, well, all the receivers are hurt right now. Okay, fine. I mean, that's not entirely true. They're going to get some of those guys back, and I think some of the issues are a little overblown. But they paid the quarterback. They feel good about him. They feel good about McCaffrey. The offensive line should be better. And the defense is going to be much more well-coached. So I'm not afraid at all. I've been betting over 10.5, and I've been betting them to win the NFC. Probably a little bold, but I'm buying low, and I'm investing in San Francisco stock this season.
Sam, I am right there with you. I thought this team should have been favored in the division to open. The Rams opened the season, or opened the offseason when the books opened these numbers, as the favorite in the West. I thought it should be the 49ers all along. Robert Saleh, to your point, coaching the defense again. He had top 7 defenses in DVOA in his final 2 seasons with the team. Yeah, he wasn't a great head coach in New York, but the Jets defense was still very good. You could have 4 new starters on that side of the ball, but you still have your all-pro players. You have Nick Bosa, you have Fred Warner. And yeah, wide receiving core is really banged up right now, but okay, George Kittle, CMC, maybe you use a little more Kyle Juszczyk than you typically do. Also, Sam, I think it's worth noting that since 2011, anytime the 49ers have made the playoffs, they've made it to the NFC Championship. They've never bowed out of the playoffs prior to that. So I think with this team, I mean, I don't hate over 10.5 wins. I think that's fine, but I'm going to take them to win the NFC. I'm going to take them to win the Super Bowl and just have that in my pocket, because when they make the playoffs, they're going deep into the playoffs, where you said 9-1 almost for the NFC. I think that is a great price for a team that you mentioned has the easiest schedule in the league this year. They play the AFC South, the NFC South. Like, that's a lot of quarterbacks you're facing, like Spencer Rattler, potentially Tyler Shough in week 2. Michael Penix, yeah, he should be good, but unproven. Who knows what's going to go on in New York this year? You play the Giants. It's an easy schedule. So even if they don't have their main receivers, Brandon Ayuk likely to return week 6 from that ACL injury. Demarcus Robinson, just suspended for the DUI for the first 3 weeks of the season. So they just traded yesterday. They brought in Sky Moore. Even without some of those players, I think they can still get by, especially early on in the season with the roster that they have.
They're going to have versatility on offense. They always do under Kyle Shanahan. And I think we need to pay attention to a guy like Ricky Pearsall, who is in a great position to shine. They're going to get him the ball a ton. I think Jennings will be just fine. And then they also just made a move. They traded for Sky Moore from Kansas City, who didn't really find a role there, but if you give San Francisco another chess piece, odds are good they're going to figure out a way to use a guy like Sky Moore. Just because it didn't work in Kansas City doesn't mean that it can't work here. So I want to talk about the defense. Last year, it was a very weird year. They were 8th in the NFL in yards allowed. So a top 10 defense in yards allowed. They weren't allowing you to rack up a bunch of big plays and huge chunks of yardage. However, 8th in yards, but 29th in points. Okay, that doesn't really make sense. So it's the opposite of bend but don't break. They were the opposite. They broke but didn't bend. And that to me is based a lot around the schematics and the coaching and having guys in the right position. So I put a ton of stock into this Robert Saleh basket, maybe more than I should, but they had so many injuries on both sides of the ball. And by all accounts, the defense looks good and fresh and young and talented. They lost some guys in name value, like they lost a guy like Hufanga and they lost Hargrave. Those are big names, but they weren't productive guys the last year or so. So you bring in younger players and give these guys a chance. I think they're going to be fine. And the coaching to me is a huge deal. You give me Shanahan on the offensive side, Saleh on the defensive side. I have trust in that coordinator combo, a lot like I do in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores, a lot like I do in Kansas City with Andy Reid and Steve Spags. This is a very well-coached team. And assuming they don't have 5 players again go on injured reserve on defense, I think the regression will hit the right way.
Yeah, you talk about the regression. They were second most adjusted games lost to injury last year. That's something that's somewhat out of their control. They were also 2-6 in one-score games last year. So those things should kind of revert back to falling in their favor this year, just because that's kind of the way it goes. Sam, you mentioned it yesterday. I believe earlier on throughout the show, you mentioned it at the top. You like Christian McCaffrey, Offensive Player of the Year. He's further down the board than I would have expected, but that's because he's coming off of a fairly serious injury, missed most of last season. 20-1. Why do you think CMC can win that award this year?
The reports are good. That's really what I've been paying close attention to. And you've heard that now over the last 7 to 10 days, that he looks like himself. And you know, of course, people are going to get excited about that and they're going to write that and they're going to speak about it. But I just look at the price. So he wins this award 2 years ago. And this time last summer, Christian McCaffrey 6-1 to win the offensive player. Well, Barkley goes off, 2,000 rushing yards, 1 million touchdowns. And now Barkley and McCaffrey have sort of flipped. So Barkley's the favorite at 550, 650. And McCaffrey is in that Barkley range from last year. He's in that 22, 25 range. So more than anything, it's a price. If McCaffrey was a stock, this is the time to buy, because you know what's going to happen. He's going to score 2 touchdowns week 1, and we're all going to go, oh, that's right. He is good when he's healthy. And that 22-1 is going to go bye-bye. So I think it's very, very paramount. If you're going to buy Christian McCaffrey, you have to do it before the week 1 game. Because if he shows us any flashes of the guy that won this award 2 seasons ago, you're going to see the money come in. And then the bookmakers are going to have to move the number as well. I mean, he's 22-1 at one book right now. If he scores 2 touchdowns week number 1, where's the number? 15, 12? It's only going to go one way. If he gets hurt, that's life. That's the NFL. We're risking that because he was hurt last year, only played the 4 games. But if he played 15 games last year, we don't get 22-1. It's all relative. So I'm looking to buy a guy that the market is not. And that's the way it goes.
I also think, Sam, it's worth, I mean, of course, to every point you just made, buying CMC before the season starts, but also weeks 1 through 3 before you get Robinson back, up to week 6 before you get Ayuk back. I feel like he'll get maybe even a few more touches, a few more carries than he otherwise would, because they'll have to lean a little bit more on him, just because the receiving core, yeah, you still have some good pieces in Pearsall. Jennings is probably going to be fine, like you mentioned, but he might have to carry a little bit bigger load early on. And to your point, if he's scoring a couple touchdowns right away, that number is significantly going to dip. Do you think that's the case where they lean a little bit more on him early in the season?
I don't know about lean on. I think you kind of want to ease him back. I don't know if he's going to carry the ball or touch the ball 25 times, But I think around the red zone, inside the 20, inside the 10, he's going to be their guy. You know what's wild? We've talked, and I'll take half the responsibility here. We've gone 12 minutes and haven't brought up George Kittle yet, who
Yeah.
is one of the best tight ends in the NFL and sort of gets lost in the sauce somehow because we talk about McCaffrey and the receivers who are kind of banged up. George Kittle should have a monster year, and I'll get to his props in a second. But we have to start with Brock Purdy and George Kittle. I mean, that combination has been very lethal. And Purdy gets the bag, gets the big contract. Some say he doesn't deserve it. Well, the Niners think that he does. And Purdy's numbers are a little high for some, 3,800 yards, 3,850 at BetMGM. And then his touchdown number is only 23 and a half, 24 and a half. I think that's almost disrespectful on Purdy. I think he could easily throw for 30 touchdowns this year in this offense.
I mean, I'm a George Kittle stan. He went to Iowa, Sam. We were there at the same time. I thought he was cute back in the day. He didn't notice me, blah, blah, blah. Fine. We're both married now, happily married. George Kittle, I tried to get him on my fantasy team a couple years because I do love him. Not a great fantasy player, but his production for the 49ers, it's one of the reasons he's one of the top, or is the top paid tight end in the league right now.
He is a guy that I love over his receiving number, 900 and a half, 900.5. If he stays healthy, we have to obviously curb everything with that. If he stays healthy and plays 15 plus games, I think that's one of the better bets on the board for San Francisco. Now, granted, I like McCaffrey at a big price to win an award, and that's 20 to 1, 22 to 1. The math tells you it's unlikely. I think it's very likely that George Kittle gets 950, 1,000 yards, because they're just going to use him a lot more than they usually do because the receiving game has sort of taken a step back in terms of like guys that you can trust, right? Ayuk isn't going to be on the field for a while. Deebo Samuel is gone. Kittle's going to be the security blankie for this offense. And I think that 900 number is way too low.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier you like over 10.5 wins. You like him to win the NFC. You did not go as far as saying that they can win the Super Bowl. I think they could potentially get there. It's just the AFC opponent that they're going to play likely going to be a little bit more superior to them. Is that your thought process? Is that you don't trust them against a Chiefs, a Bills, a Ravens, any of those type of top teams from the AFC?
It's not that I don't trust them. It's just for me as simple as I don't have a great spot to hedge because if they play Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, those three teams are probably all going to be favored in the Super Bowl by what, 4.5 points, if not more. So I would hate to take a Niners ticket to win the whole thing, and then I can't really do much with it in the Super Bowl. Whereas if I take an NFC ticket, there's a chance they might have the home game. They might be at home in the NFC Championship, at which point they would be favored. And then I could take the dog, I could take the points or the money line. I think my hedge possibilities are a lot better in the NFC than they are for the Super Bowl. And, the one thing about Kyle Shanahan, he's gotten there a couple times, hasn't done it yet. So maybe that's sort of lodged in the back of my brain too.